Let's get back to Idaho and more of the Doomsday Prophet murder trial for Chad Daybell. The prosecution says that Chad's desire for sex, money, and power is what led to the deaths, killings, murders of his former wife, Tammy Daybell, and his stepchildren, Tylee and JJ. The next witness is an interesting one. He's a realtor that was in Chad and Tammy's Latter-day Saints ward, so he knew the family, and wait till you hear what he has to say, especially coming up on Cross. Let's go.
Sir, could you please state your full name and then spell your last name?
Ron Arnold, A-R-N-O-L-D.
Where do you live, sir?
In Salem, Idaho.
And what county is that in?
Fremont County.
Okay. Who are you married to?
Whitney Arnold.
How long have you lived over there in Salem?
5 years.
Okay. Do you know an individual?
Well, actually, I've lived there. Sorry, I've lived there since 2015. Yeah.
Fair enough. Do you know an individual named Chad Daybell?
Yes.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you tell me where he's sitting and what he's wearing?
He's sitting right there. He's wearing a white shirt and tie.
And were you familiar with Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Where did you meet Chad and Tammy Daybell?
I was in Chad and Tammy's ward.
Okay. And
Chad was my home teacher for 3.5 years, and him and his son came in to visit us on a regular basis for that time.
Which son was that?
Mark.
Okay. And did you get to know Tammy as well?
Yes.
Okay. About how often did you interact with her?
Not that much, to be frank with you.
Okay. I'd like to ask you about some dates in 2019 and 2020. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the weekend of September 21st, 2019?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. What's your occupation?
I'm a real estate broker in Southeast Idaho for Ron Arnold Realty.
Okay. And that weekend of September 21st of 2019, were you asked to do a real estate showing?
Yes.
Who asked you to do a real estate showing?
Chad.
Where was that real estate showing?
It was on 1800 East and about 190 North.
And that's near Salem or in Salem?
Yes. Yep.
And did you end up doing that showing for Mr. Daybell?
Yes.
Who, if anyone, came with Mr. Daybell to that showing?
I picked him up at his home, and we met people there.
Who was there?
David Warwick and Melanie Gibb.
Was anybody else there?
Yes.
Who was that?
I didn't know at the time. I was introduced to this person. They said his name, but I didn't remember. But looking back, it was Alex.
Alex who? I apologize.
Alex Cox.
Thank you, sir. Was anybody else there?
No.
After that showing, did anybody in that party purchase the property or did anything come of it?
No.
Okay. And I'd like to talk to you about October 19th of 2019. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
What happened on October 9th of 2019?
We received a call about between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. Whitney and I received a call, and our bishop had informed us that Tammy had died.
What did you actually, approximately what time on the 19th did you get that call?
Sometime between 8:30 and 9 o'clock a.m.
What did you do after getting that call?
We immediately went to the house.
Whose house did you go to?
To Chad and Tammy's house.
When you got to the house, who was there?
Chad was there, obviously, and some of the kids. Everybody was in some different rooms, so I didn't take inventory, I guess.
Fair enough. Did you see Chad?
Yes.
Did you speak to Chad?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about his demeanor?
He seemed distraught.
Did you speak to him?
Yeah, I mean, I asked him, how he was doing, and in that situation, a spouse passing away, and yeah.
Did you discuss with him how Tammy had passed on that day?
Not really. No.
Okay. Did you attend a memorial service for Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Do you recall when that was?
I think it was it was a Wednesday. I think the funeral that was in Springville and on a Saturday, and this memorial was on a Wednesday.
Okay, so when you say there were two separate services,
Yes.
and when you say one of the services was in Springville, would that be Springville, Utah, where Tammy was from?
Yes.
And you attended a service in Idaho for Tammy?
Correct.
And that was a few days after her death?
Yes.
Okay. At that memorial service, did you speak to Chad?
Yes.
What conversation did you have with Chad the day of Tammy's funeral in Idaho, or service in Idaho?
More specifically, I mean, we visited, but he said that he wasn't going to be living at the house at the time. He didn't feel comfortable being there and was going to stay in Rexburg with a friend.
And when he said he didn't feel comfortable at the house, did you take that to mean the home that he had shared with Tammy?
Yes.
Did he say anything about leaving Idaho?
Yes.
What did he tell you about that?
He said that he was going to go to Hawaii to do a biography, help a friend do a biography.
Did he identify who this friend was?
No.
Did you think that was strange?
I took it for face value. I mean, that's what Chad had been doing, writing books and those types of things.
Okay. At some point in time, did you learn that Chad had remarried?
Yes.
At some point in time, did you meet Chad's new wife?
Yes.
When was that?
It was in probably early November. Do you want me to explain the circumstances?
Well, let me just ask you a clarifying question.
Yes.
Was that in November of 2019?
Yes.
Approximately how soon after Tammy had died did you meet Chad's new wife?
That's when I met her.
In November?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember when in November?
Not specifically. We were having his kids over for a family evening and a meal. And he had called me that day and said he wanted to bring his new wife over for us to meet. And I had explained that I says, well, you know that your kids are coming over to our home for supper. Why don't you just come then and eat with us, and you can introduce us then.
And did you meet Chad's new wife that night?
Yes.
Who was that?
Lori.
Lori Vallow?
Yes.
Did you have a conversation with Chad and Lori about whether or not Lori had children?
We asked her the normal questions you'd ask somebody that you don't know, where are you from? How many kids do you have? Those kinds of things.
And do you recall what Lori's answers were, or what Chad may have said?
I recall her saying that she had 7 kids.
Okay. And could that have been in reference to her and Chad's kids combined?
I was thinking that it was her children, not Chad's.
Okay. Did she say whether she had children living at home?
No.
Okay.
She was not specific about her children.
Okay. Were you with her the entire night, or were you in other parts of the conversation that evening?
They weren't there that long, but we had a dining room area and a family room area that are kind of connected, and so everybody was kind of together,
Socializing.
Socializing us.
Okay. After the dinner that you had with Chad and Lori in November of 2019, when was the next time that you heard from Chad?
All right, the real estate agent Ron Arnold, who knew Chad and Tammy, and then got to meet Lori, still with us, criminal defense attorney, former district attorney Matthew Mangino. This witness at this point, moving the ball at all?
Well, I don't know that he's moving the ball, Ted, but I was surprised by that sort of flat affect when he said he met Lori in November, which would have been maybe a month after Tammy's death, and he didn't seem to think that that was in any way unusual, or at least hasn't expressed that at this point. But I guess we'll see where this testimony ultimately goes.
Yeah, and I don't know a lot about the Mormon faith, but covering Lori's trial, you got the feeling that there was a marriage. People meet and marry, I think, more quickly than in other areas. So maybe that there's a part of that. And if you were the prosecution here, would you want LDS members on that jury who kind of can see through? They understand things. They understand the wards. They understand, all of it in a different way than others, where you might get a non-Mormon who thinks, oh my gosh, this is crazy, where they could be put more into context. Is that who you would be after on that jury if you're the state? Obviously, the defense wouldn't necessarily want them.
Well, yes. I mean, I think obviously someone who has a background in the Mormon faith and understands sort of the nuances of the faith and how the congregations, for lack of a better word, interact and all that. But again, when you're talking about, possibly having someone on the jury who's devoutly religious, regardless of what their particular faith is. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's alleged to have murdered his wife and then his new wife's children. That doesn't ring, real, hospitably to people who are devoutly religious. I mean, if you're devoutly religious, you're going to be turned off by Chad Daybell immediately. But who knows? I'm sure they gave some thought to who they wanted on a jury and who they wanted to stay away from.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about the devoutness and being turned off by Chad Daybell. I think 90% of human beings are going to be turned off by Chad Daybell almost immediately when you hear the story of what he had cooking there with old Lori. Let's get a break. When we come back, the witness says that he asked the question everybody else wanted to know. He asked Chad straight to him while JJ and Tylee were missing. Where are the kids? See what the answer is coming up. We are watching testimony unfold in the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho for the Doomsday Prophet murder trial. Defendant Chad Daybell is charged for his alleged connection to the deaths of his wife Tammy Daybell and Lori Vallow's children, JJ and Tylee. Let's go back into the courtroom together now. We're picking it up right where we left off. This is the direct examination of this realtor. He was also in Chad and Tammy's Latter-day Saints ward and was notified of Tammy's death. And he says he asked Chad at the time, where were the children?
In March of 2020.
In what part of March of 2020 did you next hear from Chad?
It was around the 16th of March.
And how did Chad contact you, or how did you come into contact with Chad?
He called me and asked if he could meet with me.
And did he tell you why when he was speaking with you on the phone?
No.
And did you meet with him that weekend in March?
Yes.
Where did you meet with him?
He came, we were just moving from our rental into our new home, and I had him meet me at our rental.
And Judge, could I have some foundation as to what year they're talking about?
Would this be, thank you, Mr. Pryor, would this be March of 2020?
Correct.
Thank you. So you met with Mr. Daybell at your rental home. Mm-hmm. And what did you do next?
He got in with me in my vehicle and we drove around and visited.
What was the first thing that you talked about with Chad Daybell?
I asked Chad the questions that probably everybody else would want to ask about where are the kids and why haven't you told anybody? And sorry.
That's okay. So let's zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
What was going on at that time that caused you to ask Chad those questions?
Lori had been incarcerated. And there was the big news and search for missing children.
Now, did you learn why Chad had wanted to meet with you that day?
Yes, eventually, yes.
And why had Chad wanted to meet with you that day?
We had previously talked about splitting his property and possibly putting another home on it. And we determined that his lot was too small. And so he wanted to know if he could put a home on it, which I thought he could. My experience thought he could probably put another home on it. And we talked about the fastest way that could be done, and that was with either a manufactured or a modular home, and we talked about some of those details.
And did he tell you why he wanted to put that home on his property at that time?
He said that he felt like he was going to need a place for him and Lori to live.
Okay. And you said that you talked to Mr. Daybell about doing that as fast as possible. Why did you talk about doing it as fast as possible?
Probably because getting into a home and having one built back then took 8 to 10 months, and you could get a manufactured home in 3 to 4 back then.
Okay. And back to the conversation that you had with Chad about where the kids were. When you asked where the kids were, whose children were you referring to?
The kids that were missing, Lori's kids.
His wife Lori's children. And what did Chad tell you about his wife Lori's children and where they were?
He looked me straight in the eye, and he told me that they were okay, and when this all was going to be, when everything came out, that everything was going to be just fine.
And that was in March of 2020?
That's correct.
I have no further questions for this witness.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Beatty. Mr. Pryor-Cross, yes.
Good morning, Mr. Arnold.
Good morning.
So my understanding is you mentioned that you live in the Salem, Idaho area, right?
Correct.
Been there since 2015.
Correct.
You're actively involved in your church, is that right?
Yes.
That's the LDS faith, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Please, Mr. Arnold, wait until the question's done before you answer. Our court reporter can only take down one at a time.
Judge, I just realized I was going very quickly, so I'm going to also slow down.
I like him to go quickly.
Seems to be a habit with a lot of people. You mentioned that Chad was a member of your ward. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, now, from someone on the outside, describe in essence what a ward is.
A ward is a geographic area in a stake that's the geographic area inside the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay, so are there more than one stakes in a state?
Yes.
Okay, so a ward is a geographical area within the a part of, in this case, it's Eastern Idaho. Is that right?
Correct.
And that would include the town of Salem, which is, I've been there a couple of times. It's a small community, right?
Salem's not an incorporated town. It's a small community. A ward has somewhere between 300 and 600 people in it. A stake has somewhere between 25 and 3,000 people in it. And it's based on numbers in a geographic area.
So if we talk about the Henry's Fork ward, we're talking about a very large geographical area.
The Henry's Fork, there is the Henry's Fork ward, but it's the Rexburg Henry's Fork stake, and it had 9 wards in it, and the ward we were in was the Salem 3rd Ward.
Okay, and having gone through Salem, what I recall about Salem is there's a church there.
Correct.
And that's kind of pretty much all of Salem. Would that be fair?
Well, there's a lot of residents there, all spread out, but yes.
Other than commercial buildings and religious facilities, Salem consists of a religious facility, right?
Yeah, there is a church house in Salem.
And it's a fundamental part of the community there. It's a drawing area where the people meet on Sundays and other times for various activities. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
And in one instance, the use of Salem Church is for some of the folks out in the Salem area, the only place that they could get internet access. Would that be fair?
No,
It's not?
no.
Okay. But the church offers free internet as part of its building there. You recall that?
The internet in our Salem building is really bad, so you don't go there to get internet.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned in September 21 of 2019. Do you recall that?
September
21 of 2019.
Yes.
And that was on a Sunday.
Well, if the 21st is a Sunday, yes.
Okay. Well, on that particular day, you were at church with Chad that morning, and
That is correct. Oh, sorry.
that's okay.
Don't hold me in contempt. I'm trying.
No, takes a lot more than that.
Would you ask him for me too?
Okay, yes.
Thank you. You're just going to make me slow down even more now. Okay, so on September 21 of 2019, you started the day with Chad at church services. Is that right?
That's correct.
And without getting too personal, I know how long I'm in church, but how long of a process is that?
Well, it's a 2-hour block, but there's meetings for leaders before, and then there's some things to do after church.
Right. So it can encompass 3, maybe even 4 hours sometimes.
Correct.
So on that particular day, although you may not have a specific recollection, Chad could have been there just before 12 o'clock that day. Would that be fair?
I can't remember, to be frank with you, what time we was meeting, because we switch every year. Our meeting times switch every year.
But it does run late into the morning, right?
Yes.
So that wouldn't have.
All right, we're going to slip in a commercial break here. More cross coming up. And coming up, the witness blurts something out that triggers a sidebar and lots of discussion. Stick around. Back to Idaho we go now, where we've been watching day 12 of testimony in the murder trial for Doomsday prophet Chad Daybell. He faces charges in the deaths of his wife, Tammy, and Lori Vallow's 2 children. Prosecutors accuse him of espousing religious beliefs to justify these murders. Let's head back now into the courtroom. We're picking it up right where we left off with this realtor who was also in Chad and Tammy's Latter-day Saints ward. Coming up, he is going to trigger a sidebar, and it gets everybody's attention.
So that wouldn't have given Chad an opportunity on a Sunday to leave and meet with anybody else prior to you picking Chad up at his house on the 21st, right?
I was not with Chad eye-to-eye contact the whole time at church, before or during or even after.
Okay, but when you picked up Chad at his house, he was still in his church clothes, wasn't he?
He was in a white shirt and dress pants, but no tie.
Okay, but that wouldn't be unusual for what he would wear to go to church, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then at that point, you picked him up and you drove out to a piece of property that you were trying to market. Would that be fair?
Yes, which was basically less than 2 minutes from Chad's home.
Right, and I appreciate you telling me that. And at this point, Chad mentioned to you and a guy by the name of Keith about looking at that property. What was that connection with the property and a Keith?
Keith was somebody that I had been talking to about trying to help him find either a home or a piece of property that he could purchase and build a home on.
Okay, and then that particular piece of property is something that Keith was interested in prior to you going out there with these other folks. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. But then at some point, Chad contacted you and said he has someone who has expressed some interest in buying or at least purchasing some property in the area. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that person was a guy by the name of David Warwick?
That's correct.
And David Warwick contacted Chad, and in turn, Chad provided you with David's phone number.
That might have been how that went. I think originally we met at the property first, and then I think Chad provided the phone number for David.
Okay, but you're not sure about that.
Yeah, I can't remember the order of that.
It could have been the other way.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first time I met David Warwick was at that property.
Right. Okay, so we're unclear as whether you had the phone number before or after.
Correct.
Okay. And then when you drove out to that property with Chad after church, did you visit any other properties?
No. I had tried to get Chad to wait till Monday, and he had indicated that they were only going to, the people that were coming to look at it were only going to be there Sunday, and it would only, we really needed to do that. So he pressed that. And so I reluctantly agreed to go show that property and it was actually in the afternoon.
Okay.
It was after 12 p.m.
It was later in the afternoon.
It was a little later in the
So
afternoon.
maybe church and all of the obligations with church may have run a little later.
I had been at home. Well, I had been at home when he called and says,
Okay.
will you come and show this property?
Okay. And at that point, when you showed up, there were several people there. Is that right?
The only person there was when I arrived was, and I learned this later, was Alex.
Right.
And then while we were there briefly, and David and Melanie showed up.
Okay. So from what I understand then, it's your testimony that this person, Alex, showed up first when you arrived with Chad.
I don't recall if he was there when we arrived or he arrived after we were there, but we weren't there very long.
Okay. And this person drove in his own vehicle when he arrived there. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I assume that. Yes.
It wouldn't be someplace where you'd walk from somewhere in Salem to go there,
No.
right? Okay. And then subsequent to that, in an absolutely separate car, the other two people who you mentioned were, who were the other two people that were there afterwards when Alex arrived?
Oh, David Warwick and Melanie Gibb.
Okay. So then in a separate car, David Warwick and Melanie Gibb arrived, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how long were you there looking at the property?
Maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. And did David express that he had an interest in purchasing a piece of property?
He had indicated that he was either looking here or in another location to maybe do some developing.
And did he have did he give you the indication that he had the financial ability to do that, or is that something you looked into?
We did not talk about that at that time.
So at this point, on September 21 of 2019 in the afternoon, if I understand you correctly, you didn't look into the financial resources that David may have to purchase 88 acres. Is that right?
It was 79 acres, and I had not checked with him prior to that.
Oh, I was under the impression it was 88 acres. Am I mistaken?
79.
79 acres? Okay. And the cost of that 79 acres would have been about how much money?
At the time, about $700,000.
Okay. But you didn't take the liberty of deciding whether or not David could afford that 700 and some odd $1,000. Is that right?
Mr. Pryor, I didn't know who was coming.
Okay. That's okay. I'm just asking.
I went there to show the property as a favor to Chad.
Right.
And so that's the first time I'd met David Warwick. Chad had mentioned that he had talked to several people that were maybe possibly looking at developing property in the area.
Okay.
And I assumed that this was one of them.
Okay.
And so if we would have kept pursuing it, obviously I would have.
Okay. And that's not the ms. a means. I'm just getting the fact that we didn't establish whether David could even afford to buy that property is where I was going.
I guess I'm not seeing the relevance of that question to me.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunately up for the judge to decide, not for you and I to decide. You understand that, right?
I guess. No,
Okay,
I don't.
thank you.
Maybe not.
Okay. And then at some point, there was an arrangement for you to meet the following day with David. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think we maybe tried, but they were leaving town, and so the only contact I
All
had
right,
with
John Pryor getting under the skin of Ron the Mormon Realtor. It gets even worse. Coming up, we'll also check in with our Kelly Craft stewardess. Welcome back. We're watching testimony in the Doomsday Prophet murder trial for Chad Daybell out in Idaho. He faces first-degree murder charges for the death of his wife, Tammy, and for the deaths of 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old J.J. Vallow. Prosecutors claim that Chad and his wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, thought that Lori's 2 children had become dark spirits and zombies, and the only way to save their souls was to kill them. For the defense side, John Pryor's trying to portray Chad as a religious man who was manipulated by this evil woman named Lori. Let's go back in the courtroom now for more of the cross-examination of this realtor. Ron Arnold, he's starting to get a little upset with John Pryor, and in a couple minutes here, he's going to blurt something out.
that was, we had a couple phone calls, follow-up phone calls. You know, are you interested? He wasn't sure. And then we didn't have any more contact after.
So you don't recall the fact that you went to Gringo's restaurant the next day with Chad with the intention to meet David Warwick on that following Monday. You don't recall that?
Actually, I don't.
Okay. And you don't recall mentioning to Chad that David had notified you that he had already left town and wasn't going to be able to meet on the Monday following.
That's good. Yeah, that could have happened that way.
Okay. So in other words, there could have been a discussion with David about going back to the property, and it could have happened that he called you and said, I'm having to get out of town and I can't meet with you on Monday. It could have happened that way?
We did not have a conversation about him returning and looking at the property before he left town.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you, on the 19th of 2019, you were over at Chad's house. Is that right?
What's the date?
October 19, 2019?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And when you were over there on October 19th of 2019, you're familiar with that house, right?
No, I have never been inside that house.
Oh.
I had been in the foyer, and they have a breezeway or an entryway, and that's as far as I'd ever been in that house.
Did you familiarize yourself with the property surrounding that house?
When we talked about splitting the property, it was about the acreage, not about the house or the floor plan or any of those kinds of things.
Okay, so the acreage that you're talking about, do you have any recollection of how much acreage we're talking around that surrounds Chad's house?
You own it. How many acres is it?
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know. Judge, could we have a sidebar?
Yes.
Wow. Ron the Realtor. You own it. You should know, obviously, John Pryor has acquired that property as part of his payment, likely, for trying to save Chad's life in this death penalty case. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. She's outside the courthouse there in Ada County. Happy Friday, Kelly, to you. Wow, that was quite the moment. What stood out to you so far today as we look forward to another day of testimony here, in this case against Chad Daybell?
Hi there, Ted. Yeah, you can tell the witness is not that crazy about the questions that John Pryor is asking him. At one point, even saying that he really didn't understand when John Pryor explained to him, it is up to the judge to determine if something is relevant or not. Wouldn't you agree? And at first he said yes, and then he's like, I don't really know if I do agree. So hearing from him today, the realtor, we also heard from a former neighbor of Chad and Tammy Daybell. So just kind of setting the scene about the time frame when Tammy Daybell died, and then also getting into this fact that Chad had contacted the realtor and wanted to take a drive. And during that drive, he was telling him that he was going to be building a house for him and Lori, wanting to subdivide his property that he had and asking him if he could build another piece of property on the property that he had. The realtor thought at first it was a little bit small, but then thought it could be done. Maybe a manufactured home could be done quicker than building a home. He said at that time it was taking about 8 to 9 months to build a home, where a manufactured home could be built in 3 to 4 months. And then he asked Chad about the whereabouts of JJ and Tylee. So there was this huge search, missing children, JJ and Tylee. And so he asked Chad about it. Let's listen to what Chad's response was.
What did Chad tell you about his wife Lori's children and where they were?
He looked me straight in the eye, and he told me that they were okay, and when this all was going to be, when everything came out, that everything was going to be just fine.
And Ted, so you heard him say, looked me straight in the eye and said that everything was going to be just fine. Another witness on the stand, this is talking about the time right after Tammy Daybell was deceased. And there was a conversation between Tammy Daybell's brother and another gentleman. And there was a conversation about, well, do you think that Chad possibly killed her? And Tammy Daybell's brother said, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Everyone's reaction to Tammy's death is really on display here for this jury, and Chad's the one person that didn't seem to have the normal reaction, and that seems to be coming out in the state's case. But John Pryor hammering around all these witnesses, and we're going to head back into the courtroom now. Kelly Craft, thank you. As always, we'll be hearing from Kelly throughout the day here on Court TV. She continues to cover this case for us. So, John Pryor, you heard him react to the witness saying, you own it, you should know. He asked for a sidebar, and then the judge addresses the jury following the sidebar. Take a listen.
Thank you, counsel. We're back on the record. I had a sidebar with counsel regarding the last response from the witness, and I just want to instruct at this point, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the witness just provided what was essentially an unsolicited factual response in the case, and that answer has no relevance to the charges in this case or the guilt or innocence of the defendant. I'm going to instruct you to disregard that previous comment made by the witness, and on that fact, do not discuss that in any way in your deliberations or speculate about the previous answer. And I'll also instruct the witness to avoid mentioning that topic again. Mr. Pryor, with that in mind, then you can continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Now, you mentioned that Chad said that the kids are fine, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that the truth will come out. Is that what you said? Something to that effect?
I didn't say the truth. He said that when things all come out, everybody will realize that everything will be fine.
Okay. So from that, did you glean that the children were alive?
I assumed yes.
Okay. And did Mr. Daybell at the time, did Chad at the time, when he told you that, was he sincere about when he told you that?
Yes.
And you've known him for a while, and that was true sincerity when he told you the kids are fine, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Hold on, don't answer that. Sustained.
Okay. Now, you talked about the fact that there was some discussion, and please, oh, there we are. You talked about the discussion that it would generally be against your practice to do anything on a Sunday, correct?
I don't try to work on Sunday.
But then, for lack of a better word, from my perspective, that would be called like a Sabbath. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
But regardless of your faith and your beliefs, it's a day that you reserve for spending time with your family and doing things in that regard, church and family.
Yes.
Okay. And Chad was of the same faith as you are and had the same practice of Sunday was reserved for being at home with his family and practicing your faith and your commitment to your family. Would that be fair?
Everybody does that different.
Okay. And typically most folks in your faith would have some sort of a meal on a Friday or on a Sunday in the morning or in the evening. Is that true or is that not true?
That's subjective too.
Okay.
Everybody does that different.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Then you went to a discussion that in March of 2020 that there was some discussion about subdividing the property. Is that right?
Objection misstates the testimony.
Abstain.
You had some discussion about putting another modular home on the property. Is that right?
We had determined by then that we couldn't, that the county wouldn't let him split the property.
Okay.
But because there had been a single wide trailer on the property as well as the home and another septic system. And I had told him that the county would probably allow him to put another home on it, knowing that he would never be able to split that or sell that separately.
Okay, I see. So I misunderstood the facts a little bit. Thank you for clarifying. So in other words, there was some thought process initially into doing some sort of division of the property, and you folks determined that was not feasible. Is that fair?
That's correct.
So the only other option would be to use a then existing septic that was already on the property somewhere, correct?
No.
Okay, please tell me then.
Because it had a septic system, the county would probably allow him to put another home on it, not necessarily that they would have to use that septic system.
Okay, all right. So there was an intent of March of 2020, from what I gather, for Mr. Daybell and his new wife to put a residence up for them to live in.
That's what he indicated.
Okay, so the intent was for them to stay for a while, and then
Objection calls for speculation.
Abstain.
the intent was to put a mobile home up on the property for him and his wife. Is that right?
He had mentioned that could have been one of the reasons.
Okay. Judge, I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
All right, redirect.
Your Honor, I'm sorry to do this, but I'd ask for a brief sidebar. I think
Okay, why don't we do this? It's a good point for our mid-morning recess. Let's go ahead and take the recess. If the jurors are able.
Okay, the state asking for that sidebar triggered a recess, and they are actually going to discuss what the state believes is an opening of a door there by John Pryor right at the end there. The realtor was explaining that Chad came to him and said, hey, I want to plop a mobile home on my property. Lori and I are going to live happily ever after-ish after she's out of jail. And then John Pryor asked, so they were going, he was building this so he could live with his new wife. The state thinks that triggers now motivation for building this mobile home, which they believe was so that he could have some cover to dig up and or deal with the dead bodies on his property. So let's talk about it with Michael Jafer, Big Case Mike, they call him. He is with us. He's a national trial attorney. And this is going to be a unique argument where the state believes the door has been open. These are always very pivotal. And your thoughts? Is this an open door, or are these a bit of a stretch?
That's a tough one. That's a very, 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 very tight window. I don't think it does, right? Because to say, to suggest that, hey, perhaps he was buying this property to live happily ever after with his wife, I don't see how, because to open the door to something like that, you have to show that you have to then bring in the evidence to bring in context, right? You have to show that. That's part of the elements that you have to do. So there's going to be an oral motion in front of the judge before they bring in that testimony. They can't just come in there and just blurt it out and then the judge tell the jury, give them an instruction like he just did, forget that you ever said that. I don't see this judge actually saying, yeah, because he brought up that question, you can bring up this whole side tangent about the kids. And I just don't see that happening. Crazier things have happened, but I don't think that would open the door. But I do agree with you. It does kind of, it's a little bit of a trip into that direction, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. And Stephen Boyce, the judge, has been very conservative. One could argue with his rulings here. This is a death penalty case. It will be mulled over. If you're going to put someone to death, guess what? That person gets the they get counsel and they get the appeals. This will be looked at if indeed it comes back in a death conviction, and he seems to be ruling along those ways, not wanting it to be overturned. So we'll see what happens. Let's get a break here. Reminder, coming up this weekend, a new Court TV special that explores the evidence against Delphi suspected murderer Richard Allen. In this, we talk exclusively to his former lead attorney, and this is a great interview because, you know, defense attorneys, they say they think their guys are innocent. Well, no, he really does, and it kind of makes you think, did they get the right guy there? The state sure thinks they do. It's a case you have all been watching for years. This Sunday, watch the Delphi murders, the case against Richard Allen, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here, Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the high-stakes death penalty trial of Chad Daybell. We'll take you inside the courtroom as we unpack today's key moments. Plus, the controversial case against Karen Reed, the Massachusetts woman who claims she's being framed for the murder of her police officer boyfriend. We're breaking down everything you need to know ahead of Monday's opening statements.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We just saw the judge send the jury out for a mid-morning break, and now they're going to argue outside the presence of the jury about Realtor Ron Arnold and what the state believes was John Pryor opening up a door here. John Pryor asked him about the intent of Chad Daybell to get this manufactured home put on his lot. This is after the state asked him as well, and as far as the jury is concerned, it's because Chad wanted to live there with Lori. As soon as she got out of her legal issues, she's in jail at the time. But the state's saying, you just opened the door to this other theory that he wanted the manufactured home plopped onto his property so he could deal with the remains of Tylee and JJ that are buried there, and he knows it. So let's go back into court, see what the judge decides, and watch the arguments.
Into this witness's intent, I think that having this witness testify about Mr. Daybell's intent and his sincerity and his rationale for putting this manufactured home on the property, I think the door has been opened to the fact that it is now Mr. Arnold's opinion as a realtor and as somebody familiar with what it takes putting a manufactured home on a property that Mr. Daybell's urgency in wanting to put that manufactured home on the property while Lori Vallow was incarcerated was due to the fact that doing an excavation would allow him to dispose of evidence. I warned Mr. Pryor about that this morning prior to the testimony of Mr. Arnold. I had no intent to get into that on direct, but it's my belief that the door has been opened.
Response, Mr. Pryor.
Judge, I don't believe the door has been opened in that. The difficulty, as I'm allowed to inquire, was the intent, because the initial testimony, if anybody opened the door, the state, when they said, well, they talked about Chad and Lori wanting to live in the house, and there was testimony about that. I'm allowed to inquire as to whether or not Chad and Lori were going to be allowed to live in the house, and that was their intent to live in the house. There's no intent to open any door, and there wasn't any opening of any door. And if you're going to allow a realtor to speculate, and obviously a hostile realtor to speculate about something like that, I think that's highly prejudicial, and the door has not been opened at this point.
I think the door has been opened at this point based on the cross, so I'll allow that, but I'll be careful, Ms. Beatty. It's got to remain within his personal knowledge, not speculation, of course. And I also am somewhat concerned about your witness going back with that factual assertion that's going to confuse the jurors. So be cautious if you're going into that territory, but I do think the motivation or intent was brought at issue in cross. So I think it is fair game for redirect. But boy, I want to be ready to try to shut things down if it starts to run off the rails on that previous issue as well. So that'll be the court's ruling. I'll permit limited questioning on that, so long as it goes to direct personal knowledge that this witness may have about the issue.
And Your Honor, if I may ask just a clarifying question to make sure I stay within the parameters of the court's ruling.
Yes.
My intent would simply be to ask the realtor, based on his knowledge of, the process of putting a manufactured home on a piece of property, and based on what he has learned about the children being found on the property, does he now have a different opinion about why Mr. Daybell wished to have a manufactured home put on his property?
Well, so long as it's based on his personal opinion on facts that he knows and not just pure speculation, I'll see how the questioning goes, but I will permit a line of questioning on that.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll take our break and then we'll try to come back on here 20 minutes at about 10:35. All rise.
Okay. The door was open. Who knew? Michael J., for a reaction to that ruling by the judge. Oh, mute.
It was narrow. I still don't like it. But he did limit it to the realtor only being able to testify to things he personally knew and not speculation. I was still a little bit surprised by that. And I agreed with John Pryor. John Pryor wasn't opening any door. He was following a door that was opened by the prosecution. I liked his argument. You're not going to win them all, but the devil's in the details, Ted. I really want to see how the prosecution follows this thread with this realtor. This realtor is a hostile witness to the defense, and he's throwing John Pryor for fits. I was a little bit envious of John Pryor's cross-examination skills up until yesterday. He's still doing a good job. I mean, he's dealing with the overwhelming amount of evidence against his client, so this is not a position to envy. But I think this is. I'm a little bit, the devil's in the details. I want to see how the prosecution goes through this door that they have now proved to the judge that has been opened by John Pryor. But knowing John Pryor, he's going to come out with a paddle and smack them if they take any missteps. It's not out of the realm of possibility, that, you could have some sort of a mistrial. It's too early to say, but John Pryor is the guy to call out BS when he sees it.
So here's what happened. We fast forward a little bit, we were a bit behind. So the jury still not back. The parties reassembled. And big case Mike, he thinks he knows stuff, because guess what? Pryor also believes that old Ron, the Mormon realtor, is a hostile witness and wants that to be declared. So let's watch.
On the record, CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. The jurors are not present. The court did just want to put something on the record here, that we had a sidebar outside the presence of the jury and the witness and off the record regarding the response as it related to the witness saying that Mr. Pryor was an owner of property. The court determined in that sidebar that was an irrelevant fact for purposes of the case and shouldn't be considered by the jury. I just wanted to make a record of what was said in that sidebar and would ask counsel for both the state and the defense to refrain from any further questioning that may elicit that, since the jury's been instructed to disregard it as anything to consider in deliberations in the case. So with that in mind, we're continuing with the cross-examination. I think we are starting with, I apologize, we're on redirect. Is that correct, Ms. Beatty? Okay, we'll continue with the redirect then. We can go ahead and have the jurors brought back in.
Okay. So that he was just putting that on the record. The hostile stuff comes up later. The bottom line is, this is the point you were talking about, Michael. The prosecutor has to be careful here, right? Just because the door is open doesn't mean you run through it. And the judge sort of warned her, and to your point, Pryor's going to be ready to pounce. It's a little bit unpredictable when you have a witness that is definitely trying to win the case. You know, he's a lay witness, a realtor, but you can tell he's up there fighting for the state. Sometimes that's not what you want for a witness, correct?
I didn't like that about the witness. When he gave that answer, I grimaced, right? It was highly unprofessional. That's not your opportunity to be a comic. If you want to be a comic, there's a comic circuit. You can go try your hand at being a comic. Very, very, very difficult. I've seen many people try it. Not in a murder case. He was trying to be whimsical. He was trying to be. What business do you have? First of all, you didn't sell John Pryor the property. You just found out about it, and then you looked at him in a question not related to him owning the property and saying, you should tell me you own the property. That was highly, highly, highly unprofessional, highly, highly distasteful. I didn't like it at all. And that's not just me as an attorney who's been in a courtroom who's had witnesses try to be comical. It's not that. I don't think I've ever seen something like that, right? So, knowing John Pryor, he's going to have an answer. He's going to have a very crafty response. Sometimes you give the prosecution enough threat to hang themselves. Maybe this is part of it. I mean, this guy has been very impressive. I was not sold on him at the beginning of this trial. I heard you saying something like he's a very good attorney, and you disagreed with me when I said he might not be the right attorney for that case. My assessment ended up being completely incorrect on that one. He's doing a good job.
Let's get a break, and then when we come back, we will get the redirect. We'll see how the prosecutor is able to inch through the door and not make any missteps. We'll watch it together right after this. To Idaho for more testimony in the Doomsday Prophet murder trial for Chad Daybell, charged with conspiracy and first-degree murder in the deaths of his first wife, Tammy, and J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, the two youngest children, of course, of his second wife, Lori. Let's go back now into the courtroom. The jury's back in the courtroom. We're going to pick it up with this redirect of Realtor Ron Arnold. The door, according to the judge, has been opened, so the prosecutor can ask Ron Arnold about his opinion of why he why he believes Chad really wanted that manufactured home on his property.
Mr. Arnold, we spoke about the weekend of September 21st, correct?
Correct.
And you spoke with Mr. Pryor about the weekend of the 21st, correct?
Correct.
I just want to be clear for the record. Could it be that the 22nd of September was actually that Sunday of the weekend of the 21st?
Whatever day Sunday was that weekend is the day that we met at that property.
So it was the Sunday of that weekend?
Correct.
Thank you. And you mentioned that Mr. Daybell told you that he had guests in town that day, correct?
I'm not sure I was aware of that, other than that he had indicated that they were going to be in town or around, but nothing specific about him having guests in town.
Okay. So did he make, I should ask this a different way. Did he make any representations to you about how long these folks were going to be in town?
No.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you for clearing that up.
Correct. Sorry, that's not correct. He said they were going to be leaving and could only meet on that Sunday afternoon.
Okay. Thank you. Now, who contacted you about doing this showing of this piece of property?
Chad.
And you were asked about the financial position of David Warwick, who wanted to look at that piece of land?
I was.
As a realtor, do you run credit checks on people before you show them a piece of property or a house?
Sometimes, yes.
Is that something that you would do on a regular basis, though?
No.
Is it unusual that you didn't run a credit check on Mr. Warwick that Sunday?
No.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Pryor talked to you about the defendant's rationale for wanting to move a manufactured home onto his property in March of 2020, correct?
Yes.
Now, as a realtor, are you familiar with what the process of installing or placing a manufactured home on a piece of property is?
Not all realtors are.
Okay, but do you have an idea of what the generalities of what that would take?
Yes, I do know that. Yes.
Okay. And have you assisted other customers in obtaining manufactured homes and putting them on pieces of property?
Yes.
Now, can you kind of briefly describe what that process would entail?
There's a key word there, brief.
Okay.
I'll try to be brief.
How about as briefly as possible?
Well, you procure a manufactured home. You have to procure a piece of property to put it on, and then you have to do on-sites, meaning the foundation. You have to dig a foundation for footings and for how to put the structure so you can put the structure on it. You have to either hook up to city water, city sewer, or if you're in the country, you have to do a well and septic system.
Okay. And as a resident of the Salem area, you're aware of what was found on Mr. Daybell's property in June of 2020, correct?
Yes.
Based on your knowledge, well, let me backtrack a little bit. You were asked by the defense attorney about what you thought about Mr. Daybell's beliefs, or what you were asked what Mr. Daybell's beliefs or intentions were for putting a manufactured home on his property, correct?
Yes.
And that one of those reasons could be that he wanted to live there with his wife, Lori, when she got out of custody, correct?
Yes.
Based on what you know now, do you think that there may have been a different reason that he wanted to put a home on that property?
Yes.
I have no further questions for this witness.
All right. That didn't open the door for any further recross, so that will conclude the testimony of Mr. Arnold. Is he under subpoena by the state?
No, Your Honor, he can be released.
All right. From the defense?
Judge, he can be released.
Okay. Thank you for appearing and testifying. You may go ahead and step down, and that'll conclude your testimony.
Am I allowed to stay in the court?
If you'd like to, now that you're no longer going to be testifying, you may.
Okay, the door was open. She squeaked a little bit through it, but Michael Jafer, very cautious. Obviously, they didn't let him opine about the reason, and that is to deal with these bodies. They just sort of left it out there. What are your thoughts? Did it hurt at the end of the day? Did people connect the dots?
I think all those jurors came into that case knowing every single thing and the whole entire background and watched the Netflix documentary about Lori Vallow Daybell, right? So all the jurors definitely were able to connect the dots. I thought that was a bad moment for the defense. I don't know why John Pryor didn't object to that last question. Hey, did you think that there was another How does he know? How would he know, right? How would you ever know what anyone is thinking? We're talking right now, you and I, Ted. I don't know what you're thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking, right? Like, how would he even know that? I was kind of surprised that he didn't object, even if it was overruled. But I think they all connected the dots, Ted. I like the way you brought it. You phrased it. Did they connect the dots? I think they did. I think that was not a good moment for the defense. Could have been better.
Okay. Good. Let's get a break. Did you notice that the realtor said he wanted to stay in the courtroom?